I'd like to start by asking a question. Can you design without sight? It's a perplexing question. As a publication designer and design educator, I can't do my job without sight. The very field of graphic design is called visual communication. Its name implies vision and an ability to see. But maybe that's misleading. Maybe vision and the act of design can be separated. Maybe we need to check our blindness. So let's imagine this. You're a university instructor who's just opened their inbox to read the following. Dear Professor Gagnon, I am writing to you about the student Jillian Sloan, who is enrolled in your course Pub 131 in the fall term. Jillian has significant visual loss, is effectively blind, and will require extensive accommodations to access all course materials and to complete all exams. Have you ever had one of those moments where your brain realizes something, but you're really just getting a 404 error? The hamster's stuck in the wheel? Well, that's kind of how I was feeling. You see, the course in question is called Publication Design Technologies. In it, I guide students with zero knowledge of graphic design and design software, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, to being able to design, print, and hand-bind a copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. In 14 weeks, students learn to make their first book. It's a pretty fun, but as my students like to tell me, demanding course. Yet there I was, reading an email telling me that a legally blind individual wants to take this class. I didn't get it. Why would someone who can't see want to design? What's the point? And how is that even possible? I found myself writing the following response. I'm happy to make accommodations, but I honestly don't see a clear way forward. Pub 131 is a design course, and all but one assignment is a purely visual design project. Ultimately, if the student in question cannot do visual design, this course will be impossible for them. Looking back, I was reluctant, to say the least, and merely donning the guise of accommodation. I was uneasy. Reading this today shames me. I was vulnerable and unprepared to deal with the situation, but I can't make excuses for myself. Society teaches us to be inclusive. We are aware that education is a human right and must be accessible for all. And yet, I was clearly thinking that there are caveats at play. I mean, how on earth does one teach a legally blind individual to use design software as a graphic designer? It doesn't make sense. I selfishly assumed that Jill would not be able to do the work without sight, that it was impossible. That's A, not cool, and B, so incredibly wrong. As I realized over the coming weeks, graphic design and the design process isn't purely visual. There are many, many non-visual components to it. And who am I to say that someone can't design? They merely need a different approach. And that's what I needed too. The day I met Jill, I had so many questions. Do you have any vision? Can you see shapes? Can you sense colors? Do you understand color? I had switched into curious mode. I wanted answers. Why was Jill here making my life complicated? Turns out, she's a woman that doesn't take an I can't do it approach to things. I quickly learned that she had recently completed a course in video editing. Yeah, a legally blind individual doing video editing. Again, I was stumped, but reassured in her confidence. Jill began the course with an instructional aid by her side to assist in describing visual course content. First project, a typography poster. I figured this was the moment we see what's really going on here. What is Jill capable of? Is this a waste of my time? Jill and her aide Megan developed novel collaborative approaches to learning design software together, describing visual forms, and completing layouts. Here we see page layout and structure demonstrated using the addition of raised tactile Lego blocks. Here we see typographic samples created using a tactile printer dubbed the Toaster, allowing Jill to choose desired fonts. Here we see Jill's layout printed with sewing added to highlight different visual and textual areas for her hands to assess. And lastly is the final poster showcasing the font Baskerville and its common use as a much-loved typeface for book design. Genius. Who knew you could feel your way through fonts and layouts with just your fingertips and some clever tactile solutions? Second project, a trifold marketing brochure, was tackled with similar adeptness and increased layout complexity, including the addition of Braille in raised fabric paint. Looking at this, one can see that it's well-ordered and has a clear aesthetic. Yet, it was designed without the designer ever being able to see it. Jill had proven that she was capable of far more visual work than one could possibly predict or imagine. Final project. That hand-bound copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland sealed the deal. Jill not only designed it, she also commissioned and art-directed a friend to create the illustrations. In our story, it was the blind leading the non-blind. This is Jill. She's legally blind, and she's sewing a book that she designed. She doesn't take an I can't do it approach to life. She figures things out. She wants to be a book editor one day. From what I can see, I have no doubt that she'll do it. We could all learn a thing or three from Jill. Being a graphic designer, I communicate primarily through visual form, and I teach my students to do the same. At first glance, yes, I think we can all admit that a legally blind graphic designer appears to be an oxymoron. Design equals visual, the visual requires sight, the visually impaired don't have sight, therefore they aren't designers. Simple math. But this equation doesn't add up in my world anymore. Graphic design is more than visual communication. People are more than what we see at first glance. They are many things that we cannot see. They are more capable, more inspiring, and more resourceful than you can imagine. Looking back, I can tell you that there was only one blind person in my classroom, me. Through my own actions, I nearly prevented someone from excelling due to my discomfort. That's not my goal as an educator, and that shouldn't be anyone's goal as a human being. We need to lift each other up. As a society, we must overcome our vulnerabilities and blind assumptions to allow ability to shine, no matter what form or method, visual, non-visual, or otherwise, it takes. If that means we need to change ourselves, the institutions we serve, or other forces, then we must do so. When we check our preconceptions and trust in the ability of others, the things we'd least expect become possible realities.